From one European country in turmoil to another, the president of France has delivered a mea culpa after weeks of violent protests. Emmanuel Macron made a dramatic statement last night and bowed to some of the protesters' demands, including tax concessions and a hike in the minimum wage. So with this dramatic move, will this end the chaos? From the streets of Paris, here's Charlotte Dubenskij with the latest.
Well, hundreds, if not more than 1,000 students have turned out for this protest today, and happy yet again that the admission process is due to change here in France. They say that that will become discriminatory from students from poor backgrounds. This protest comes just hours after President Macron gave a speech to the nation last night outlining his proposals to try and end the protests that we've seen in France, particularly the protests by the yellow vests, which have been violent for the last 4 weekends. This is what the president had to say to the nation.
Because of this crisis, I want to reconcile with you. Salaries will increase by €100 in 2019, at no extra cost to employers. Overtime will not be taxed, and I will ask all employers to pay an end-of-year bonus. This will not be taxed, and there will be no social payments. For pensioners receiving less than €2,000, the tax increase will be cancelled, as we had planned.
The total cost of all the measures is likely to be between 8 billion and 10 billion euro. We are in the process of fine-tuning to see how to finance it.
I've been speaking to many of the protesters at this march today, and they say they're unhappy that Macron's speech didn't really touch on the things that they have been protesting about for the last year or so. He talks about educational reform, but they say it wasn't enough because he didn't offer anything to them. And when I asked them about what's been offered to the Yellow Vest movement, this idea of increasing the minimum wage, giving people earning the minimum wage €100 plus a month for giving concessions to pensioners, they said it's not enough, it's not good enough, and it's too little too late. This is what some people have been telling us.
I think for the Yellow Vests, the measures will not be sufficient right now because they're waiting for much more from our president.
I don't think it's enough. I don't think it will change anything. It also has to be doable. You can throw numbers like that around, but we don't know if it's achievable, so we're waiting.
Well, first of all, Macron needs to keep his promises. He can take measures, but still put something new in place in the background. It won't stop him from creating new taxes. I personally want the Yellow Vest protests to continue.
So that's the reaction from people on the streets here in Paris. There still seems to be a huge amount of anger and tension towards the president. Many people saying what he offered last night was too little too late. But what about political reaction? This is what's been happening so far.
I believe that round 5 of the revolution in our country next Saturday will be a great moment of mobilization. But of course I think it's up to those who are in the protest movement.
Macron has become dangerous for France. Under the guise of measures, he chooses not to change his policy and continues to rule against the people. If Emmanuel Macron is so sure of himself, he should have the courage to have his measures backed by referendum.
So far, it seems that the olive branch offered by President Macron isn't enough to quell the disquiet, the unhappiness and the anger here in France. Many people still calling for his resignation, saying what he offered last night was too little, too late, and he needs to offer more. And for the moment, it looks like the protests are set to continue, with the Gilets jaunes set to have another protest on Saturday this weekend, which will make it the 5th weekend in a row. Charlotte Dubenskij, RT, Paris.
And joining me now with his take on what's unfolding in France, Conservative commentator Steve Malzberg. Hey there, Steve. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Manila.
So Macron has declared a state of economic and social emergency in France and even gave this mea culpa regarding the protesters who feel their economic plight has largely been ignored. Macron is pro-business, as we know. Do you think this was a good move on his part?
I think he came off looking weak and pathetic, and he's not going to, as you heard from the protesters or the people who just commented, he's not going to please them. You're not going to please them until they get everything they want for free. I mean, he says violence is not going to be tolerated. Violence is not the answer. He's going to stop the violence at all costs. And then he begs employers, please give these people bonuses. We'll give you a raise of the minimum wage. You won't have to have the tax on pensions. You won't have to have the tax here and there. We'll give you whatever you want. Please stop. I think he looked pathetic. He looked weak. He did it on a pre-recorded videotape. It wasn't even a live speech from what I gather. And I think he's just setting the stage for more riots. There'll be more protests on Saturday, and guaranteed they turn into to riots again. I don't know where it ends unless he gets tough.
Now, you rattled off some of the measures he's taking. Let's take a look at some of those measures. He says to quell the outrage, some of that's going to be increasing the minimum wage by 100 euros a month, also removing taxes on overtime pay, scrapping taxes on pensions under 2,000 euros a month, even going as far as asking business owners to issue tax-free bonuses at year's end. So do you think those concessions will actually help the situation in France, at least for now? Because he's hoping to quell the violence and the riots happening, especially over the holidays, which I'm sure are impacting all the businesses along the Champs-Élysées.
Oh, it's an economic disaster. You're absolutely right from that angle. Look, it started out as a protest against the fuel tax. He immediately, last week, withdrew the fuel tax, and the riots continued on Saturday. And now he's given these concessions, and you see what the man in the street is saying. Still not enough. The students are marching today. Still not enough. He's not going to be able to satisfy these people. The only way to get tough is to declare a state of emergency in general and combat the violence. When the violence goes away, that's when you sit down and talk with people who make demands. You don't capitulate in the face of violence, and then they know what works, and they hope to get more. And by the way, these people in France have to learn what people all over the world have learned in various countries at various times. You don't get anything for free. Okay, you could demand free education, free this, no taxes, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And who's paying? The rich? You can't squeeze enough out of the rich to satisfy all these people's demands.
Now, I'm glad you brought up the whole rest of the world because, as you know, the French have this long history of violent oustings of their political leaders. And given what appears to be sort of this populist movement that is sweeping across the globe, could this be the demise of the Macron government?
Oh, I think it's absolutely. I think he's on the brink right now, and it depends on what his actions are and how this pans out. I think he needs to get tough. Being weak hasn't worked and won't work, and he needs to get tough. Violence cannot be the answer. Otherwise, you don't have a democracy any longer.
All right, let's leave it right there. Thanks so much for your insight on that. As always, Steve Malzberg.
Thank you, Manila.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe to never stop questioning more.